Writing, "You want to pay me to pretend I'm your boyfriend?" The stranger looked at the $300 in my hand, then back at me like I'd just offered to buy one of his kidneys. My chest tightened. When you say it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad. He leaned against the brick wall outside the Clark Street station, rain darkening the shoulders of his worn jacket. I'd seen him there for weeks. Same corner. Same beat-up backpack. Same steady gray eyes that made me feel like he noticed more than he let on. I knew exactly 3 things about him. His name was Mason. He drank coffee black, and he hated being treated like a charity case, which made what I was doing even worse. "It's one weekend," I explained, lowering my voice as commuters pushed past us. "My sister's engagement party. My family thinks I'm dating someone." His expression didn't change. "Are you?" "No, so you lied." I panicked. "And now you're panicking harder." He wasn't wrong. 20 minutes earlier, my mother had called to confirm dinner reservations and casually mentioned that she'd added a seat for my mysterious boyfriend. The boyfriend I invented after one too many questions about why I was still single at 29. I tried friends first. One was out of town. One laughed for a full minute. Another told me to hire an actor. Then I saw Mason beneath the station awning, repairing the strap on his backpack with a piece of electrical tape. I wish I could say I had a better idea. I didn't. "You'd get the money up front," I added. His eyes dropped to the bills again. For half a second, something shifted in his face. "Need, maybe." Then it disappeared. "Why me?" That question hit harder than it should have. I opened my mouth, but nothing useful came out. "Because you're here" sounded cruel. "Because you need money" sounded worse. "I don't know," I admitted. "You seem believable." One eyebrow lifted. "Believable as what?" Heat climbed up my neck. "As someone I'd date." The space between us went strangely quiet. Mason studied me so long I started regretting every decision that had led me to that sidewalk. His gaze moved over my face, not flirtatious, not exactly, just careful, like he was trying to figure out whether I was dangerous or simply stupid. Probably both. "You always offer strangers money to lie to your family?" "This is a first." "Good. I'd hate to think I wasn't special." I almost laughed, but his expression stayed serious. I slowly lowered the cash. "Forget it. This was insulting." "I'm sorry." I turned before he could see how embarrassed I was. "Ethan." I stopped. I told him my name once, weeks ago, when I bought him coffee during a cold snap. I hadn't thought he remembered. Mason shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. I didn't say no. My stomach dropped. "You didn't." I said it was bad. The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. "That's different." He told me he'd think about it. I gave him my address, which felt reckless, then spent the entire night convincing myself he wouldn't come. At 8 the next morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. Mason stood in the hallway, damp from the rain, his backpack hanging from one shoulder. He looked past me into the clean, quiet apartment, then met my eyes. "If I do this," he said, "you don't get to treat me like I'm invisible." Writing, "Invisible is not the word I was going for," I told him, stepping aside. Mason entered slowly, like he expected me to change my mind before the door closed. His jacket was damp. His backpack looked heavier than it had the night before. I noticed him glance at the hardwood floors, the framed prints, the kitchen with appliances I barely used. Then his eyes landed on the small stack of folded towels I had left on the counter. I had not meant for them to look prepared. They did. "So," he murmured, "this is where desperate people with good credit live." I laughed before I could stop myself. "You can still leave. You already gave me the address." He set his backpack beside the couch, but kept one hand on the strap. "Tell me everything." "Everything. How long have we been dating? Where did we meet? What does your family know about me?" He sat on the edge of the couch, posture straight, expression focused. Suddenly, I felt like I was the one being interviewed. For months, I decided. We met at a coffee shop. Which one? Does that matter? Mason gave me a flat look. "Your mother is going to ask." He was probably right. My mother could turn brunch into a background check. We built the story piece by piece. Mason worked in home repair. We met when he noticed I kept ordering the wrong drink because I was too awkward to correct the barista. He started showing up on purpose. I accused him of stalking me. He claimed it was romantic. "That part sounds made up," I told him. "All of it is made up." His mouth twitched. "Try to keep up, boyfriend." My stomach did something stupid. It was just a joke. A useful joke. Nothing more. I stood too quickly and grabbed my keys. "We need clothes." Mason's expression closed immediately. I have clothes. For the party. I know what you meant. The warmth disappeared from his face. I heard myself explaining before I had even chosen the words. My family dresses up. I just thought it would help the story. Help the story, he repeated. Or help you feel less embarrassed standing next to me? The question landed hard. That is not what this is. Then ask me what I would wear. I went quiet. He looked away first, jaw tight, and I realized I had managed to insult him twice in less than 12 hours. What would you wear? His eyes came back to mine. The silence stretched. Then he exhaled through his nose. Not whatever expensive costume you were planning to buy me. We ended up at a thrift store in Lakeview instead of the department store near my apartment. Mason moved through the racks without hesitation, choosing a dark blue button-down and a charcoal jacket that fit him like they had been waiting there. When he stepped out of the fitting room, I forgot what I was supposed to say. Clean lines, broad shoulders, the same worn boots. Still Mason. Just suddenly impossible to look away from. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You are supposed to look impressed at the party, he murmured. Not now. I am checking the fit. Sure. He stepped closer and lifted one hand to straighten my collar, even though there was nothing wrong with it. His fingers brushed the side of my neck. My pulse jumped. Mason's eyes held mine for 1 second too long. You get nervous easily, he said quietly. I swallowed. Only when strangers touch me. His hand dropped, but the almost smile stayed. Good thing I am your boyfriend, then. Writing, by the time we got back to my apartment, I had almost convinced myself the fitting room moment meant nothing. Mason had adjusted my collar. That was all. People touched each other all the time without their pulse trying to escape through their throat. Your mother's name? Mason dropped into the chair across from my kitchen table and opened the cheap notebook we had bought on the way home. Linda. Father. Robert. Sister. Claire. His pen moved quickly. What does Claire do? Physical therapy. What does she think of me? She does not know you exist. Mason looked up. That is comforting. I slid a mug of coffee toward him. Black. No sugar. I had remembered. His eyes moved from the cup to my face, and something in his expression softened before he covered it with a sip. You are learning. I pay attention. Do you? The question was quiet enough to sound harmless. It was not. I sat across from him and opened my own notes. We met 4 months ago at a coffee shop. You made fun of my order. Because you ordered a vanilla latte and pretended you liked it. I do like vanilla lattes. You apologized to the barista before ordering. I stared at him. How would you know that? Mason shrugged, but his gaze stayed on mine. You look like someone who apologizes before asking for anything. I laughed, then stopped when he did not. The room went still. Not awkward. Worse. Honest. I looked down at the notebook. What is my favorite food? Thai. That was fast. You have 3 takeout menus on the refrigerator and 2 are Thai. Favorite movie? Something embarrassing you will lie about. That is not an answer. You have a framed poster from The Princess Bride in your hallway. Heat climbed into my face. Mason leaned back, clearly enjoying himself now. You were supposed to be learning my answers, not investigating me. Same thing. Fine. Your turn. I tapped the pen against the table. Favorite food? Anything hot. That is vague. It is accurate. Family. His expression changed so quickly I almost missed it. The humor disappeared. His fingers tightened around the mug. Not part of the story. Mason. Ethan. He matched my tone exactly. I should have stopped. Instead, I pushed. If my family asks where yours lives, I need something. He stood, chair scraping against the floor. Then make something up. You are good at that. My stomach dropped. I did not mean, you meant we need a believable version of me. He reached for his backpack. I get it. Rain struck the windows hard enough to pull both our attention toward the glass. The forecast had called for a storm, but not this. Water ran down the street in sheets. Mason stared at it, jaw tight. You cannot go back out in that. I have been wet before. That is not what I meant. I grabbed the gray hoodie from the back of the couch and held it out. Stay here tonight. Take the couch. Leave in the morning. His eyes narrowed. Because you feel guilty? Because it is raining. You always this bad at answering simple questions. Only around you. The words came out before I could stop them. Mason went quiet. So did I? For a second, neither of us moved. Then he took the hoodie, his fingers brushing mine. Careful, he murmured. That almost sounded real. I told myself he was joking. Later, sometime after midnight, I found him standing by the window in my hoodie, watching the rain. I brought him water. When he took the glass, Our fingers touched again. This time, neither of us pulled away. "You should sleep," he said softly. His eyes stayed on mine. "We have a long weekend ahead of us, boyfriend." I went back to bed with my heart pounding. In the morning, the broken cabinet door in my kitchen was hanging perfectly straight. Writing, the cabinet door should not have mattered. It was one loose hinge. I had ignored it for 6 months. But seeing it fixed made something in my chest pull tight. Mason stood at the counter drinking coffee like he had not quietly improved my apartment before I woke up. "You did that." I pointed toward the cabinet. He glanced over his shoulder. "It was bothering me. You barely slept." "Neither did you." My stomach dropped. He did not look at me when he said it. He just took another sip. "We should leave in an hour," I muttered. "My mother hates late arrivals." Good to know. The drive to my parents' house took almost 40 minutes. Mason sat beside me in the charcoal jacket, one hand resting near the gear shift, close enough that I kept noticing it. At a red light, I caught him watching me. "What?" He looked away. "Nothing." "That was not nothing. You grip the wheel harder when you are nervous." "I am not nervous." "Sure." My parents' house was already loud when we arrived. Cars filled the driveway. Music drifted through the open windows. I barely made it to the front steps before my mother appeared. "Ethan." She hugged me, then turned immediately toward Mason. Her eyes moved over him in one quick sweep. "And you must be the mystery man." Mason smiled and offered his hand. "Mason Reed, it is nice to finally meet you." Finally. He delivered it perfectly, like we had been talking about this day for months. My mother's whole face softened. "Come inside. Claire has been asking questions all morning." The next hour went better than it had any right to. Mason remembered every name. He helped my father carry folding chairs without being asked. He made Claire laugh within 5 minutes. I watched him move through my family like he belonged there, and that was the dangerous part. He did not look like someone pretending. During dinner, Uncle Paul leaned back in his chair and looked Mason over. "So, home repair? That's steady work." The table quieted just enough for me to notice. Mason's expression stayed calm. Steady when people break things. A few people laughed. Uncle Paul did not. "And where are you based?" "Chicago. Own a place." My chest tightened. Before I could step in, Mason rested his hand on my knee beneath the table. "Firm. Grounding." "I am working toward it," he replied. His thumb moved once over the fabric of my pants. A small motion, probably meant to keep me from saying something stupid. It worked. Mostly. My mother changed the subject, but Mason's hand stayed there. I could feel the warmth of it long after the conversation moved on. He finally pulled away when dessert arrived. I hated that I noticed. Later, Claire cornered me in the hallway. "He really likes you. He is being polite." She gave me the same look she used when I lied as a kid. "Ethan, he watches you every time someone else talks." My pulse stumbled. "You are imagining things." "Am I?" Before I could answer, Mom called us outside for photos. She placed Mason beside me and frowned. "Closer. You two look like co-workers." Mason's arm slid around my waist. My breath caught. "Better," Mom announced. "Now look at each other." I turned. Mason was already looking at me. The noise around us faded for one strange second. His face was close. Too close. His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth, then came back up. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it through his hand at my waist. "Smile," the photographer called. Neither of us did. Mason leaned in just slightly, like he might say something only I could hear, or do something neither of us could explain. Then the camera flashed. We both blinked. The moment broke, but his arm stayed around me. "Mason," I whispered. His fingers tightened once against my side before he let go. "Right?" he murmured, almost to himself. "Just a picture." Writing, the picture should have ended the moment. It did not. For the next hour, every time I looked across the yard, Mason was already watching me. Not staring, just checking, like he needed to know where I was. Claire noticed first. Of course she did. She caught me alone near the drink table and lowered her voice. "You know Mom is already planning your anniversary dinner, right? We have been here 3 hours. That is 3 hours too long for her imagination." I reached for a bottle of water. Claire did not move. "Seriously, Ethan, what is going on?" "Nothing is going on. You nearly forgot to breathe during that photo." The cap slipped in my hand. She raised one eyebrow. "And Mason looked like he was about to kiss you." He was not. I said it too quickly. Claire's expression changed from teasing to careful. "Do you even know if this is real?" My chest tightened. Before I could answer, Uncle Paul called Mason over from the patio. He had two other relatives with him, all wearing the same polite expressions people used when they were about to ask something rude. I watched Mason walk toward them, shoulders straight, face calm. "How did you two meet again?" Paul asked. "Coffee shop," Mason replied. Ethan kept ordering a drink he hated. One of my cousins laughed. "That sounds like him." Paul did not. "And you do contract work?" "Mostly repair and carpentry." "For a company?" Mason paused. Barely a second. Still, I felt it. "Independent." Paul nodded slowly, like he had just confirmed something. "Must be hard to build a future without much stability." The words were casual. The judgment was not. My stomach turned. I stepped forward. "He is doing fine." Mason's eyes flicked toward me. "I can answer for myself." His tone stayed even, but the distance in it made me stop. Paul lifted both hands. "Just making conversation. Then try being better at it." Claire muttered beside me. Mom called everyone inside before the tension could get worse. Mason followed, but he did not look at me again. In the kitchen, I found him helping stack plates. "Are you okay?" He kept his attention on the sink. "Why would I not be?" "Mason, your family wants to know whether I am good enough for you." A plate clicked too hard against the counter. "They do not know you. Neither do you." That landed harder than Paul's questions. I lowered my voice. "I am trying to." Mason finally looked at me. There was something tired behind his eyes now. "For the weekend." "That is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" I had no answer that did not sound dangerous. The silence stretched between us. Claire entered carrying napkins, took one look at our faces, and stopped. "Am I interrupting something?" Mason stepped back immediately. No, the word came out flat. Too fast. He carried the plates into the dining room without another glance. Claire watched him leave, then turned to me. "You are going to hurt him." My throat went dry. "This is not real." She looked almost sad. "You should probably tell your face." That evening, Mom announced the sleeping arrangements. Every guest room was taken. Claire and her fiancé had the basement. My parents had already put fresh sheets in my old bedroom. "You and Mason can take it," Mom said brightly. "There is only one bed, but I doubt that is a problem." Across the room, Mason met my eyes. For one long second, neither of us spoke. Then he gave a small, unreadable smile. "Of course not," he murmured. "We are very convincing." Writing. The room felt smaller with the door closed. Mason stood near the bed, loosening the cuffs of his blue shirt while I stared at the floor like it might offer instructions. "I can sleep down there," I told him. He glanced at the narrow strip of carpet between the bed and the wall. "You would last 10 minutes. I have slept on worse." The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Mason's hand stopped. His expression did not change, but the silence did. "Right," I muttered. "That came out wrong. Most things do with you." There was no edge to it. Not quite. He sat on one side of the mattress and removed his shoes. I took the other, leaving enough space between us to fit another person. Maybe two. The lights went out. For a while, neither of us spoke. I could hear voices moving through the hallway, pipes knocking somewhere in the wall, Mason breathing beside me. "Why did you lie about having a boyfriend?" His voice came through the dark, quieter than usual. "I told you." My family would not stop asking. "That is not an answer." I stared at the ceiling. "Everyone here has something figured out. Claire has a career, a house, someone who wants to marry her. My parents have been together 34 years. I am the one who keeps showing up alone. So it gets old feeling like the unfinished part of the family." Mason shifted. The mattress dipped slightly. "You have a job, an apartment, people who care whether you show up. That does not mean it feels full." The words surprised me. I had not meant to say them out loud. Mason went still. Then, after a long pause, he spoke again. "I know." I turned my head. His face was only a shadow against the pillow. "You do?" He exhaled slowly. "My father died 2 years ago. I left work to take care of my mother. When she got sick, bills piled up. After she was gone, I was behind on everything." His voice stayed even, but one hand tightened over the blanket. "Lost the apartment. Then the job. After that, every week made the next one harder." My chest ached. "Mason, I am sorry." Do not. Do not what?" "Look at me like that." "Like what?" He turned toward me. Even in the dark, I could feel his eyes on mine. "Like you want to fix it." I swallowed. "Maybe I just want to understand." The space between us felt charged now. Too quiet. Too honest. I placed my hand on the blanket between us, not reaching for him, just leaving it there. A few seconds passed. Then his hand settled over mine. Warm. Careful. His thumb moved once across my knuckles. My breath caught. Earlier, I whispered, when my mother took that picture. Mason did not pull away. What about it? It looked like you were going to kiss me. His fingers tightened around mine. Would that have been a problem? My heart slammed against my ribs. I do not know. That is not an answer. He used my own words against me, but his voice had gone soft. I forced myself to look at him. Would you have? Mason stayed silent long enough to make my chest hurt. Then he leaned closer, stopping with only a few inches between us. I do not know, he murmured. But I did not hate thinking about it. Neither of us moved after that. Not closer. Not away. His hand stayed over mine until sleep finally found us. When I woke the next morning, my head was resting against his shoulder and his arm was wrapped around my waist. Mason was already awake. He looked down at me, eyes tired and completely unguarded. We should move, I whispered. His arm tightened for one brief second. I know, but he did not let go. Writing, for 1 second, I considered staying exactly where I was. Mason's arm was still around my waist. My head was still against his shoulder. The room was quiet enough that I could hear his breathing change when I looked up at him. Then footsteps passed in the hallway, and reality came back all at once. I pulled away too quickly. We should get up. Mason's arm dropped. Right. The word was flat. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly fascinated by my socks. About last night. You do not have to explain. I was not trying to. Good. He stood and reached for his shirt. The distance between us returned so fast it made my chest ache. I told myself it was better this way. We had crossed too close to something neither of us understood. The weekend would end. Mason would leave. My life would go back to normal. That was the plan. Downstairs, everyone was already eating breakfast. Claire took one look at us and almost smiled. Sleep well. Fine, I answered. Mason pulled out the chair beside mine, but did not sit there. He chose the other end of the table. I hated how much I noticed. The engagement party started that afternoon at a small event space near the lake. Mason played the role perfectly. Too perfectly. He held doors, remembered names, kept a respectful hand at my back when people approached us. But whenever we were alone, he stepped away. No teasing. No quiet looks. Nothing that felt real. Then Caleb showed up. I had dated him for 3 months the year before. He was charming in the specific way that made every conversation feel like a performance. Ethan Walker. He pulled me into a hug before I could stop him. You disappeared. Over his shoulder, I saw Mason watching us. His expression did not change, but his jaw tightened. Caleb, this is Mason. Caleb looked him over with open curiosity. The boyfriend. That is me. Mason's voice was calm. For 4 months, apparently. My stomach dropped at the word apparently. Caleb either did not notice or pretended not to. He kept one hand on my shoulder. You never told me you were seeing someone. We are not exactly close anymore. We could fix that. Mason stepped closer. Not enough to cause a scene. Enough that Caleb finally removed his hand. He already has plans with me tonight. The sentence sounded sharp. Possessive, almost. For half a second, hope moved through me before I crushed it. He was acting. That was what I had paid him to do. Later, I found Mason near the bar, staring down at a glass of water. You did not have to rescue me. I was doing my job. You sounded jealous. He looked at me then. His eyes were tired, guarded. You want me to be? My throat went dry. I tried to laugh. You are really good at this. Something closed in his face. Right? Acting. He set the glass down and walked away. I followed him into the hallway. Mason, wait. He turned so suddenly, I nearly ran into him. What do you want from me, Ethan? I do not know. That is becoming a problem. His voice stayed low, but the hurt underneath it was impossible to miss. Last night felt real to me. This morning, you looked at me like you regretted it. I was scared. Of me. Of wanting something I cannot keep. The words came out before I could stop them. Mason went still. For one long moment, neither of us moved. Then his expression hardened again. You do not get to be jealous of someone you rented. He walked back toward the party, leaving me alone in the hallway with the truth I had been avoiding. The weekend was almost over, and for the first time, I was terrified he might actually leave. Writing, the drive back to Chicago was almost completely silent. Mason sat beside me with one hand against the window, watching the city lights pass. I kept trying to find the right thing to say. Every version sounded worse in my head. By the time we reached my building, the silence had turned heavy. He carried his backpack upstairs without waiting for me. Inside the apartment, he took off the charcoal jacket and folded it over the back of a chair. Careful. Neat. Like he was already removing himself from the room. I went to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the envelope. $300. Exactly what we agreed on. The second Mason saw it, his face changed. Not much. Just enough. Here. I held it toward him. For the weekend. He looked at the envelope but did not take it. You really know how to make a moment feel special. My stomach tightened. That is not fair. No. His eyes finally met mine. We spent last night holding hands. I woke up with you against me. Then you spent all day reminding me I was hired. I was trying not to make this harder. For who? I lowered the envelope. Both of us. Mason laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You keep deciding what is best for both of us. What do you want me to say? Something true. The room went quiet. He stood only a few feet away, but it felt like there was a wall between us. Fine, I muttered. I hated seeing Caleb touch you. Mason did not move. I hated that you sat away from me at breakfast. I hated that you kept acting like nothing happened. My voice caught, and I looked down. And I hate that you are about to leave. His fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack. Then asked me to stay. I looked up. His expression was guarded, but his eyes were not. They were waiting. Stay. The word came out too fast. Mason shook his head. Not like that. What does that mean? Do you want me here because you care about me? Or because you feel guilty sending me back outside? The question hit exactly where it was supposed to. I opened my mouth. Nothing came. Mason watched me struggle, and I saw the answer form in his face before I gave one. That is what I thought. No. Mason, wait. He took the envelope from my hand, folded it once, and slipped it into his jacket. You paid for 2 days. You got 2 days. That is not what this was. Then what was it? I stepped closer. He did not back away, but his shoulders went tight. I do not know what to call it, I admitted. I only know it stopped feeling fake. Mason's eyes dropped to my mouth for one brief second. Then he looked away. It felt real to me too. My chest pulled tight. Then do not leave. His hand lifted like he might touch me. It stopped halfway between us. Real is not enough if you are ashamed of wanting it. I am not ashamed of you. Maybe not. He picked up the gray hoodie from the couch, folded it, and placed it in my hands. But you are still ashamed of needing anyone. He walked to the door. I followed, panic rising too fast. Mason. His hand rested on the doorknob. For a moment, he stayed there without turning around. You asked me to pretend you wanted me, he said quietly. I did not expect you to make me believe it. Then he left. The apartment went silent behind him. I stood there holding the hoodie, still warm from his hands, and finally admitted the one thing I should have said before he opened that door. I did want him. The problem was, I had waited until he was gone. Writing, for 2 days, I called Mason and got nothing. I checked the station, the shelter on South Wabash, the coffee shop where I had first bought him a drink. By the third morning, I was running out of places and excuses. Then I remembered the notebook. During our fake relationship rehearsal, Mason had mentioned a community workshop where people could repair furniture for cash. I found it in a converted warehouse near Pilsen. He was standing at a workbench, sanding the edge of an old dining table. Gray t-shirt, dust on his hands. My hoodie was gone. For some reason, that hurt. Mason saw me in the doorway and went still. You found me. You were not answering. That was intentional. I nodded because I deserved that. The room smelled like sawdust and coffee. A radio played somewhere behind us. Normal sounds. Normal morning. My heart was pounding anyway. I am not here to offer you money. His jaw tightened. Good. Or a place to stay. That got his attention. I stepped closer but stopped before I crowded him. I kept thinking I needed the right thing to say. Something that would fix it. Mason looked down at the sandpaper in his hand. You like fixing things. No. You do. His mouth almost moved. Almost. I took a breath. I saw you every week outside that station. I knew your coffee order. I knew your name. And I still did not really see you until I needed something. Mason's eyes lifted to mine. I forced myself not to look away. That was wrong. The silence lasted long enough to make me feel every beat of my pulse. Why are you here, Ethan? Because the apartment feels wrong without you. His expression closed a little, so I kept going. Not empty. Wrong. The cabinet door works now, and every time I open it, I think about you. I make coffee and reach for a second mug. I hate that I did not ask you to stay for the right reason. And what is the right reason? My throat tightened. Because I want to know you when nobody is watching. No family. No story. No payment. Mason set the sandpaper down. You do not even know if you like the real me. Then let me find out. He studied me carefully. Same look he had given me outside the station. Like he was deciding whether I was dangerous or just stupid. Probably both, I added. That finally pulled a quiet laugh from him. It disappeared quickly, but not completely. I cannot be your project. I know. I do not need a rescuer. I know. And if this gets uncomfortable, you do not get to pretend it never happened. I held his gaze. I do not want to pretend anymore. Mason looked at me for a long time. Then he wiped his hands on a rag and reached into his pocket. He pulled out the folded envelope and pressed it into my palm. Keep it. Mason, buy me coffee. His fingers stayed over mine. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. No acting. I did not trust myself to say much, so I nodded. The next morning, he was already sitting by the window when I arrived. Black coffee in front of him. Vanilla latte waiting across the table. You remembered, I murmured. I pay attention. We started slowly after that. Coffee. Takeout. Walks by the lake. Mason found steady work at a small furniture shop and rented a room with 2 other guys. I helped only when he asked. Months later, he came over to install a shelf in my kitchen. When he finished, he stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. You know I am not paying you, I told him. Good. He turned toward me. Then what do you want? I looked at his hand resting on the counter. Then I placed mine over it. Stay. Mason threaded his fingers through mine. This time, neither of us pulled away. Okay, he said. Just that. Okay. And somehow, it was more honest than every lie that had brought us there. I once paid him to pretend he wanted me. In the end, the only thing that mattered was that when he finally had the choice, he stayed.